Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm your host, Daniel Davis. Time to get out there and enjoy a vacation, I would say, without doing the typical touristy stuff. Actually, why not make it exciting while contributing some of your time, your talent, and your resources? Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is our guest who's going to be talking about how you can plan your volunteer vacation. She is author of Smiling at the World, and I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program our guest, Joyce Major. Joyce Major, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm happy to be on.
What an interesting thing for someone to do. You know, none of this touristy sit by the pool in Mexico and drink Jack Daniels with an umbrella in the cup, but actually something more exciting than that.
Yeah, it's my favorite way to vacation, actually. It just seems like I get to know a culture, and I get to do all kinds of things that I'm not actually qualified to do.
Now, give us an idea of some of those things that you're talking about.
Well, there's a lot of wildlife conservation, and I don't actually know much about wildlife, but there's things like working with elephants, working with kangaroos, working with lions. There's a lot of conservation work that's available. Of course, you can always teach English because we're all proficient in English, so you can find places where you can volunteer around the world doing that. So it's a wide range. There's restoration work. Archaeology teams always need people. Sea turtles are always in need of volunteers as well.
Now, you talk about doing a volunteer vacation. How does a person go about deciding that they want to do this, and then giving them, of course, you've shared some ideas about what they can do?
I guess they need to decide, if they're okay with volunteering for a short period of time. And, it's like one of those decisions where maybe you won't change anything, but you're going to get to feel good about something. And so then it's finding the perfect volunteer spot for yourself, where you really say, okay, what's my dream? What motivates me? What's something that would excite me? Like, maybe you've never seen the wall, the Great Wall in China, and so maybe volunteering in China will give you a chance to meet people and work with people, and then you can take a little tour and go see the Great Wall as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, this also seems to be an interesting idea, especially as you talk about it in your book, Smiling at the World, where people who say, well, I'd really like to go to Paris, or as you said, the Great Wall of China, but I just can't afford it. How can they work something like this out, and does it become affordable?
Well, I think the longer people can stay, the cheaper it gets. Like when I was volunteering in China, it was $500 for a month for my room and board. But had I stayed a year, it would be $1,000 for my room and board for the entire year. There's another program called WWOOFing, which is Willing Workers on Organic Farms, and that's totally free. Mm-hmm. So you do have to get your airfare there, but once there, you can actually woof all over the world. You can do it in the United States. I went up to Vermont and worked on a farm, and they give you free room and board for about a half day of work.
You can't beat that.
No, you can't beat that. There was another program that I loved that was in Spain, and that's teaching English to business people for 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, you get to talk to these charming people. Room and board and wine is free, and you learn a lot about the culture. And again, all you have to pay for is your airfare. And you can do that for 1 week, or you can also do that 2 weeks.
So now, is this something that if people are in careers, maybe they just don't want to think about doing this, or this could be one of those life-changing experiences? What has been your experience with that?
My experience is that it's life-changing.
No, it sounds like it is.
Well, I think anytime you jump out of what you're used to doing and you do something totally different, it will change your life. Maybe just subtly, but it could be something really big.
Now, as a person listening to this program today decides, this sounds interesting, how do they get started, and what are some of the right questions, I guess, they can ask so they can find themselves sort of honing in to what it is they really feel they would enjoy doing? Yeah,
it's kind of, it reminds me of a dream search. You kind of have a dream in your head, and then you have to go find out how to get that dream. When I did it, I had to Google. I was like Google Queen. You know, it was like volunteer Israel, volunteer wildlife. I notice now there's way more books available. Lonely Planet has a book out on volunteering. Frommer's has a book out on volunteering. There's another one. It's Golden Opportunities Volunteer Guide for over 50 people. And so it's really just researching. It does take some research, and especially if you don't want to spend much money, because there's a lot of larger organizations that charge quite a bit. But if you can get in touch with grassroots organizations, then you're pretty much going to just have to cover your room and board. And that changes if you can stay a year or if you have some great skills.
If you really want to, be all in and do this.
Right, yeah. The longest I've ever stayed someplace is 5 months.
5 months.
Yeah.
Now, you were saying room and board in cases where people actually spend some time. You don't just go there for, say, a couple of days or maybe a week and expect the world to just hand over something to you. But there are also opportunities that range from free to up to even $250 a week in pay. Is that true?
Right. That's true. So, like the Elephant Nature Park that I went to in Thailand, that's about $275 a week. And one of the questions you want to ask is, where is that money going? I mean, besides feeding me and housing me, where else does it go? And the question there, the answer is the elephants, because it's quite expensive to feed them.
Mm-hmm.
So that money would go there. Other things you probably want to ask about are, where is your housing? Are you going to stay with a local family, which is always wonderful? I would highly recommend that. Will you stay in a guest house? If you want to be more comfortable, maybe you want to be in a guest house instead. So are you in a tent? Are you, what's the situation? Other things, maybe like food. Is the food communally cooked? Is it vegetarian? Is there a chef? The archaeology project I was at in Italy, oh my gosh, they had the most wonderful chef. And so lunch and dinner were just these divine events that I thoroughly enjoyed as far as getting to know food culture. Other things you probably want to ask is, how connected are you going to be with the local community? So you want to know, like, okay, am I going to be with people from this country, working with them every day, so that you can find out? And then, is there somebody that will help with language? Because I just went to work with orphans in Ukraine, and nobody in Ukraine speaks English. So I had to do just about that whole project with a smile and a hug and sign language. There wasn't a lot of, I was like pantomiming everything, and yet it still worked. I mean, the kids were still able to understand and play games with me. But you might want to ask if you'd like to have a little bit of English. You can also ask if there's any references from former volunteers, so that you know kind of what to expect.
Well, very good. Well, as people are listening to this right now, can they get a website to get started on their quest?
Sure. The Woofing website, if they're interested in conservation work, that one's totally free. That's www.woofing.org. If they want to teach English in Spain, the program with the business people, that's puebloingles.com, and that's puebloingles.com. And there's another one, Volunteers for Peace. If you're more interested in just bringing international groups together to work on projects and just to kind of form a bond, there's a group called Volunteers for Peace that I've heard really good things about. I've never done one of their projects. It's not very expensive, and that's VFP.org.
And then real briefly, as we ran out of time here, smilingattheworld.com is the other one. And Joyce Major, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you, Dan.